Conrad Fisher is given a level of grace by the audience that no other character gets. And this is not just coming from me. Jenny Han herself, the creator of the show, has called it out. Multiple actors on the show have called it out. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly why Conrad is treated so differently by the fandom. But first, I'll show you how despite his yearning, his self-sacrifice, his therapy sessions, he's just as much a part of the problem as everyone else. Let's take it all the way back to season 1. Susanna's sick, Conrad's hiding his pain, Belly has feelings for Conrad, and Conrad has feelings for her too. This comes to a head when Belly and Conrad almost kiss. And this is the moment where Jeremiah comes in and ruins everything, inserts himself into Belly and Conrad's love story, setting off a chain of events that set the tone for the entire series. Except that's not what actually happened. Yes, Jeremiah did childishly ruin their first kiss, but Belly still broke up with Cam Cameron because of that moment. And when she brings this up to Conrad, he pretends like it never happened.
You and I almost kissed.
Did we?
So that was it. That was their love story. That is the love story that Jeremiah supposedly destroyed and ruined. Yes, Jeremiah saw an opening and stupidly went in, but that isn't the reason they weren't together. If Conrad tells her, yeah, Belly, I remember that we kissed, this show would have ended after season 1. I wouldn't be making this video right now. So trying to paint this narrative that Jeremiah is the root of all their problems just doesn't make sense, because even if Jeremiah didn't exist, Conrad would still be a bad communicator. Conrad being a bad communicator has nothing to do with Jeremiah. Choosing to suffer in silence is something Conrad is perfectly capable of doing all on his own. Even after Belly and Conrad find their way back to each other, in season 2, as his mother's illness worsens, so does his avoidance. You know, Conrad sometimes reminds me of Charlie from The Perks of Being a Wallflower. There's this scene where Charlie's crush Sam talks to him about how badly her ex treated her, and she asks Charlie, how come you never asked me out? His response is, oh, I just wanted you to be happy. And she has to explain to him that even though having a year-long crush on her is really sweet and all, that does nothing for her. She cannot feel that.
You can't just sit there and put everybody's lives ahead of yours and think that counts as love.
And that is basically Conrad's entire arc for season 2. Belly cannot feel the magnitude of his feelings if he does not express them. So many people keep asking, how can she not see it? How can she not see that he's hopelessly in love with her? Because she's not watching the show. You are. We have hindsight. We can see and hear everything. Belly cannot feel love that's locked inside of Conrad's head.
I thought you knew. I thought you knew.
So when we hear all of these long emotional monologues about how much Conrad loves Belly, all she sees is him staring at her. There's only so much he can derive from a long drawn out stare. He doesn't actually say it to her. We, the audience, understand the weight behind his silence, but Belly doesn't. To her, it's just silence. And this theme of Conrad silently loving Belly persists throughout the show. At the end of season 2, by lying to Belly about his feelings, he makes the same mistake that Charlie does, assuming he knows what's best for someone else. He thinks that stepping aside is the selfless thing to do. Like Charlie, he retreats instead of fighting for the person he loves. And like Sam, Belly ends up in a relationship that's running on borrowed time. When someone doesn't communicate how they truly feel, you start filling in the blanks. And Belly, left in the dark, has to make decisions based off of what she thinks is true and not what actually is. That's one of the reasons she's often seen as an unreliable narrator, because some of the information she's acting on are lies. Now, to be fair, Belly doesn't end up with Jeremiah solely because of Conrad, but once Conrad sees that he might not be the one who gets chosen, he completely withdraws instead of being vulnerable and says, you know what, I'm just gonna let them be happy. But in the long run, this doesn't help anyone. He's not helping Belly and he's not helping Jeremiah. It literally hurts everyone, including himself. Because what he has now created is a ticking time bomb. The fallout of season 3 was inevitable. He was always going to confess his feelings because you cannot hold that in forever. And by delaying it for so long, all he did was make things worse. Had he been honest from the jump, the fallout wouldn't have been nearly as bad. But wait, we're told the reason he wasn't honest was because of his dying mother's last wish. But Susanna didn't say, hey Conrad, lie to Belly about your feelings. She said, take care of Jeremiah. And Jeremiah literally told him, hey, this is what would make me happy. And instead of listening to him, he ignored him because he thought he knew what was best for him, when he doesn't even know what's best for himself. And so now we create the narrative that he did this for Jeremiah, even though Jeremiah told him not to do it. He's trying to do something good, but he's not. So I'm not going to praise him for being selfless when what he's doing has a negative impact on people, including himself. It's not noble to self-sabotage. So even if his intentions are good, I'm allowed to criticize his actions if it hurts other people. And that doesn't mean that I'm a hater or that I think he's a bad person, because I'm not saying he's a bad person. I'm saying he made a bad decision. But in season 3, Conrad finally gets it right. He's gone to therapy, he finally tells Belly how he feels, and he had to do it 2 days before her wedding because he just couldn't stand for her to be with a manipulative, cheating man-child. You see, he had to come and rescue her. He's the hero. At least that's the version of the story most people like to tell. There are 2 things that are defined in every scene of a story: what the character wants and something that moves the story forward. According to many of you, what Conrad really wanted in this scene was to save Belly from being with a cheater. And that's why it actually wasn't bad timing. And yet the cheater that he's apparently trying to save her from is the same guy that he told her to go and move in with. How is that saving her? He literally tells her, hey, why don't you guys just move in together? Why don't you just go move in with the cheater? Throughout this entire confession, Conrad tells Belly multiple times not to marry Jeremiah, specifically not to marry him, because the finality of marriage is what he really has a problem with. He tells her himself, it's not about any of that. It's not about her being with Jeremiah. It's not about her being with the cheater. It's about her being with him, and that is what he wants. Conrad telling Belly he loves her is a point in the scene that moves the story forward. Notice how the scene shifts once Conrad confesses. That's the story beat, not Cabo, not Jeremiah's cheating. Because this scene isn't just about saving Belly. It's about finally taking his shot when he sees the odds tipping in his favor. In episode 8, Conrad admits he knew there was something going on between him and Belly, and yet he only brings up his feelings after he finds out about Cabo. Once he realizes, wait, I might actually have a chance, that is when he decides to drop the long-awaited I love you bomb, because Conrad does not let you take risks unless he feels in control of the situation, and having this information is what makes him think he will get the outcome he wants. And this sentiment isn't just coming from me, it's coming from his therapist, who Conrad admits is right. So yes, maybe part of him did want to save Belly, but he obviously took this moment as an opportunity to be with her. And look, I may come off as a Conrad hater, but only because so many people try to act like he's above all this. He's not. That's why he's a member of the love triangle. He's a part of the crew. All of them being wrong is literally what moves the plot. Conrad confessing before his brother's wedding is what moves the story forward. Belly dating 2 brothers is the entire premise of the show. Jeremiah meddling is what makes it a love triangle and not a 2-person love story. They all have a part to play in the messiness. So when you guys are all trying to figure out who's the villain, who's in the wrong, all of them. Why are you participating in a brother love triangle? That makes no sense. But it's a television show, and drama is what makes a show entertaining. But if everyone is in the wrong, why does the audience forgive Conrad for his mistakes more than any other character? Because the thing is, technically, you're doing exactly what the show asks you to do. You see, Conrad Fisher can't just do a bad thing. Every mistake that he makes, every setback, every lapse in judgment is preloaded with a perfectly reasonable explanation. In season 1, he's the only person that knows his mother is dying. In season 2, his mother literally dies. In season 3, we're told he lied to Belly about his feelings because his dying mother told him to. And then we're told the reason he attempted to blow up her wedding is because his brother is a backstabbing, cheating liar. You see, Conrad is never actually wrong. He just gains more sympathy points. Every wrong turn that he takes is met with a get out of jail free card before we even have the time to realize that he went in the wrong direction. Every time he makes a bad decision, we get a thorough explanation as to why he made it. Which is why I don't think Conrad is this deeply complex character. I don't think he's misunderstood. Out of every character in the show, he's the one that's written to be the most understood. The show is primarily invested in you understanding Conrad more than anything else. So much so that even the protagonist takes a back seat to his development. I understand everything that he's doing because they show us why. Whereas Belly seemingly makes stupid decisions for no reason. And when she does get an explanation for her mistakes, she does not get the same level of well-defined justification that Conrad does. This is why Conrad is the most liked character by far, because the most people are understanding him. He's written as the most humanized character, the safest place for your sympathy to land. And so we as the audience aren't really asked to sit with his mistakes and decide how we feel about them. We're asked to feel bad for him. Now, I'm not saying that Conrad shouldn't have emotional depth or context for his actions. The problem isn't that he's written with sympathy, it's that he's written with significantly more sympathy than Belly, and that wasn't the creator's intention. Jenny Han wanted us to understand and forgive both of them, but structurally the show gave Conrad the narrative tools to be understood while Belly had to fight for scraps. While Conrad's pain is treated as profound, Belly's pain is dismissed as dramatic and an overreaction. Her pain from the love of her life pushing her away and completely withdrawing from her because he didn't have the courage to break up with her is reduced to her being angry over a corsage, which, confirmed by Jenny Han, is a complete misunderstanding of what was actually happening. That's how Belly's scenes get interpreted. Her emotions get diminished to her being upset over a flower instead of her actually experiencing real heartache. In The Anatomy of Story, John Truby explains that in romance, audiences naturally align with the character who's doing the chasing, positioning them as the hero and the character they are chasing as the antagonist, because ironically, they are what is stopping the hero from getting what they desire. That is why so many people who don't even like Belly's character want her to be with Conrad, because they want Conrad to get what he deserves. So when Belly doesn't immediately return Conrad's feelings and run off into the sunset with him, she's met with outrage, because how dare she stop Conrad from having what he wants exactly when he wants it. So much of the audience is invested in Conrad finally getting a win after all of his pain and suffering that anyone who has the audacity to stand in the way of that is a villain. So when Belly challenges Conrad, she's petty and childish, but when Conrad challenges her, he's finally standing up for himself. Because once you've been trained to read Conrad's pain as poetic, anyone else's pain looks like noise. The structure encourages you to read his pain as depth and hers as drama. And let me make things clear, I'm not trying to dismiss his pain. Withdrawing as a trauma response is a very real and understandable reaction. But at the same time, I can understand his pain while also empathizing with Belly, who is hurt by how he chooses to deal with that pain. Because the reality of the situation is, even if he has a good reasoning behind all of his actions, even if his pain makes sense, intent does not erase impact, intent does not erase effect, and being held accountable isn't persecution, it's consequences, and he's not a victim for having to face the consequences of his own actions. And if we're being honest, when Conrad's grief is at its worst, people in the show do give him grace. Belly forgets him at the end of season 1. Belly's own brother forgets him in season 2, even after witnessing the fallout firsthand. It's not until season 3 that the criticism finally catches up to him, and realistically, what else were they supposed to do? Are you guys really trying to tell me that it's not justified that people are mad at him for trying to blow up Belly's wedding? Should they have no reaction to that? What is the alternative? Should they have clapped? And if you want to argue that Conrad wouldn't have been able to blow up their wedding if they were actually meant to be, or that his confession isn't what ruined their relationship, I implore you to recall this scene. He prayed for their relationship to be ruined. He wanted to break Jeremiah. So regardless of whether or not his confession was the cause of that, that is what he wanted. And after 2 full seasons of Conrad being favored by 99% of the cast, the minute someone dares to hold him accountable for this, suddenly they're the problem. Why? Because Conrad wants, he yearns, he suffers. The show aligns us with his want. And when you're aligned with that want, anyone who tries to block it, no matter how right they are, becomes the enemy. Listen, I'm not telling you that you shouldn't like Conrad. I'm saying just because you like a character doesn't mean you can't admit their faults or that they don't matter. In One Tree Hill, I was a fan of Nathan and Haley, but despite that, I can admit that he treated her horribly in season 1, from only pursuing her to make Lucas angry to being embarrassed to be seen with her. Now, at the same time, I can understand some of the motivations behind his actions, from having to deal with immense pressure from his abusive dad to having an alcoholic mother who was pretty much neglecting him. But me understanding his actions doesn't mean they weren't wrong. I can recognize that he had reasons for behaving the way that he did, the same way I can recognize that Conrad also had reasons for behaving the way he did. I can empathize with his grief, his pressure, his silence, while still criticizing the way his choices affect other people. What I am not going to do is try and explain why his very wrong actions weren't actually wrong. And you guys don't have to do that for Conrad either. You guys don't have to put in all of this work to defend his honor. You could just say, yeah, I like his character and he made a mistake. Because characters make mistakes, and they would be boring if they didn't. If the character himself can say, I did something wrong, if everyone else around him can say, you did something wrong, if the narrative can say, he did something wrong, how are you now coming to the conclusion that he didn't do anything wrong? What the show is trying to teach you is that people can do wrong things and still be good people. What the writers are asking you is to have empathy for both sides. Have empathy for Conrad, who had reasons behind the way he was acting, and have empathy for the people who were hurt by him. Having empathy does not mean to dismiss or excuse every wrong decision, but it means to still see the good in a person despite their mistakes. Jenny Han wanted fans to have the same empathy for Belly as they do for Conrad, but they didn't. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Belly is this perfect character without fault. And honestly, if you don't like her, I understand why. There's a multitude of reasons for why her character is not well received, and one of them is the writing, because somewhere along the line, the show stopped protecting its protagonist. So in the next video, we're breaking down why Belly was never really given a chance to be liked in the first place.